Hey, Chris, can you hear me? Beautiful. 1 second. Hey guys, and welcome to today's talk with Dr. Chris. It gives me great pleasure to introduce this guy. He is a wonder. He is working some magic inside of helping people to understand how our brains are wired and how we can really knock it out of the park with productivity, with entrepreneurship, with the game of life. And I won't go any further into the introduction. I'm so excited to bring Chris in. I will allow Dr. Chris to do all of the talking on that front. So let me bring Chris in. Hey, Dr. Chris, welcome, my friend.
What's going on? How are you doing, brother?
Yeah, doing well. It's bright and early over there in your part of the world, man.
Yeah, South Carolina in the US, but like the way the office is set up, you've seen it before, man, right? The sunset literally comes right up through the window, and it's like, it's hard to beat this.
Wonderful. So thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to chat with us today, Chris. It's just so good to have you on screen here and sharing your wisdom, because I mean, I know the power of the work that you do, and it is immense. So I'm super excited to share some of that with entrepreneurs from around the world. So we're gathered here during this week in a summit that was kind of triggered by the whole Global Entrepreneurship Week. There are like 170 countries involved. There are like something like 20 million people involved in events all over the world. So it's such an interesting time that we live in, right? So yeah, wonderful. And so, Chris, do you want to start just by giving us a bit of a background as to who you are and how you got to where you are now and what it is that you do? That'll be wonderful, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Complex question, right? Like there's so many different layers of that. So this was not my intended path. The life I'm living right now in beautiful South Carolina, you and I hanging out to just about everybody but me inside the confines of a journal and some visualization practices was impossible. When I was 22 years old, I ended up falling not just on my face and, life hits you like a truck. Well, life hit me like an SUV. I was riding my bike back from midterms inside of my doctorate program and ended up getting hit by a car. Blew a stop sign, hit me in, ended up putting me into the hospital for too long, internal lacerations, got catheterized, all this bad stuff. So that was the first hat that fell, right? The broken body. A couple weeks into that, found out that I had lost my dad, my best friend. Not only that I had lost him, but that he had removed himself, committed suicide. Which now I can see was just such this gift that he provided me, which is challenging for people to hear sometimes, but that was the next hat that fell. And then 2 months later after that, found out that I was going to be a dad, whoops-a-daisies type of thing, which is also one of the most incredible gifts that has ever happened to me. And oh, by the way, that same day I got my first bill for my doctorate, which was $250K. All of this while I was 22 years old. Whoa. So started to recognize all these flaws and that all these things that were going on in my own head were being perceived and had a bias around being negative. I was telling myself this self-repeating story that this was bad, this was bad, this was bad. And that was all that I could see. It was the only thing that was in my reality was bad. I'm just waiting for that next hat to fall. And if you know, that's all you see, that's all you get type of thing. So that was kind of what led me into, well, if my brain's just creating this negative bias, well, what if I change that? Right? What if I can get leverage on this thing? What if I could actually see some of these things that people are just seeing inside of me as awful, as extraordinary, as incredible? What if I could start to change my life? And that's exactly what I did. For the next couple of months, I really started to find myself, started to play the game with a big G, really look at, all right, well, I've already failed as hard as I could probably fail in my life. Now, what if instead of trusting in my doubts, I started to trust in my ambition, in my real goals, in myself? And that was exactly what I did. Started to change my perseverance, right? Started to go after things that mattered and really started to take this thing on head on. And, for a long period of time, when I was going to school, going to classes, allowing my body to heal, you couldn't find me without headphones in. I was constantly jacked in, constantly looking at research, constantly listening to summits similar to this with, neuroscience and neuroscientists and all of this, just trying to figure out what the heck had gone wrong, what fuse had been blown in my mind. I felt like this shell of a former version, but if somebody can recover from 4-stage pancreatic cancer and say it's spontaneous healing, I can most certainly recover from this. And that was the adventure that I took until somebody asked, how did you do this? You are a different person. You've changed. And I looked at them and said, you're supposed to. And then I started to explain to them what I had done. And that weekend I gave a seminar. 2 weekends after that, I started coaching people. And then about 3 months after that, the universe just kind of conspired against me. And I met one of the board members of Publix in a Waffle House at about 3 a.m. And started my consulting business. Had no idea what consulting was at the time, but the dude just could feel me, right? He's like, gave me the line that I use for a lot of my clients. Nobody remembers what you say. They remember how you make them feel. And he said, you just make me feel energized. And after that, all right, if other people are trusting in me this much, that's just validation that this craziness, this madness that I'm doing inside the confines of my own mind is actually working.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. What a powerful story, and how devastating it must have been, man, when you were at that rock bottom point. Were you on a push bike, a motorbike when you had the crash?
I was on my bicycle. I was on a 12 speed. So yeah, they want you to sit in class for 12 hours a day. I cannot sit in class. I can hardly sit at all, right? I'm at a standing desk. I've always been movement. I've always been a physically fit person, played sports all the way through collegiate, ran all those types of things. So sitting down was a no-go. So we'd have these little 10-minute breaks in between neurophysiology, and I'd get on my bike and I'd sprint up the hill and sprint back. And we had just finished one of the hardest tests that the course has to bring. And I was literally going to Walmart to get a bottle of $3 wine and dark chocolate. I was going to go home and watch Friends, because what else do you do after you just get wrecked by midterms?
Oh, wow, man. Wow. And then losing your dad as well in such a way, that must have been a tough time, right? Yeah,
to say the least. It was, I used to say it was awful, it was painful, but right, the mind remembers what you tell. You repeat this story. So now it was this challenge, right? I was pushing the rock up the hill at that time. So portion of the story, if you don't mind me sharing with you, that tell people is on February 3rd, 3 a.m., I put myself in my car. Didn't put a seatbelt on. I set the cruise control to 120 miles an hour and reclined my seat. Just waited for the tree to come, right? And this is a portion of my life it was that bad time, right? I couldn't see the light yet. Didn't know that there was something different. Just didn't have any of that perspective. But this was that moment. I woke up 3 hours later, about 200 miles away, inside of a Waffle House, and I am missing, no matter what I do, that 3-hour chunk of my time. I thought when I woke up that was it, right? I was going to wake up wherever I was going to wake up, if there was anything after that anyways. But what I found was this waitress, taking care of me. And she had no reason to. Apparently I had driven myself or something, or someone had driven me to this Waffle House in Tennessee. And I was purging, just getting all this crap out of my system. And, she woke up, and I finally started to come to a little bit. And she's just out, what is going on? Like, have you overdosed? Like, what is this? You're dressed kind of nice. Like, I just don't understand. And I kind of painted my story for her, and they fed me. The dude had gone to a Kroger, got me new clothes. Like, they just cared for me when I didn't think that that was possible, right? And that was the next thing that fell for me, is that somebody cares, right? They cared. And whatever happened in that 3-hour block of time, something cares, right? And inside that Waffle House, I wrote a declaration on a napkin. And it was that no matter what, I will be better tomorrow than I am today. And I've just never stopped.
Love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. And so that declaration, right, that I will be better tomorrow than I am today, that what a driving force, because I mean, you studied all the science of the brain, the neurology and all of this cool stuff.
Yeah.
What were the kind of light bulb moments along that path of being better every single day that really were pivotal on that? Because like any of us, right, we try and we fail, and we try and we fail, and we find things that really do make that quantum shift. What were some of those things on your journey, Chris? I'm curious.
So it started off as this quote, knowledge is power. I took that, I got a whiteboard for $10, wrote it in Sharpie, and then stuck it on my wall. And I left it there, and I would look at it every single day and try to make sense of it. So I really started to look at, what are all these spontaneous healing, successful people? Like, I just couldn't understand. There was something about it that seemed like they had something that I just couldn't achieve. And what it was this information, but I was chocked full of it, right? I had so much information, education speaking, I was the top 3% in the United States. Now, what was it about this that wasn't allowing me to thrive? And it's the functionality of it, because knowledge is authentically not power. It's the application of it that gives it power, right? That would be information to wisdom, is having application of that. So what I started to do is digest a lot of books, and really try to find out, what is it about all this information? Why is it that the top people in the world, these really successful folks, are just digesting book after book after book? So I could read a book about every month at this point, which, okay, that's average, I would imagine, at best. And then after that, I was like, okay, pick up the reading speed. So I learned to read 2 books a month, 2 books a week. That was it, right? I had tapped out the system at 2 books per week, until I ran across this crazy thing, right? YouTube at 3 a.m. finds you awful things. And this dude was not only digesting books, but he was doing a book every 30 minutes. And he said he was bad at this technique. So I went into that technique and really started to look at, all right, what the heck is this dude doing? Because he's essentially scanning books. And I found what that technique was, and I started to master it. And at first, you're awful at it. It makes no sense. Like, it is the most back-asswards way of reading a book that you could possibly get after. But what they knew at the time that I didn't understand was that if you can really tap into the power of your subconscious mind, which is 95% of your brain processes over, 100 million bits of information per second, and I need a fraction of that to read this book. Now I can understand how they can digest books. So I got good at that strategy. And then about a 3-month period of time, almost took down 300 books. And then I was using that information, right? So now I was really applying that every single day. I was like, okay, this is what I learned. And every book got a sticky note on it, right? So how did this work for me? How can I apply it? How can I change it? Everything had a tweetable, and then everything had an action step. So what did I learn, and how am I going to use it? What did I learn? How am I going to use it? And what I didn't know at the time was that I was really programming in my mind to take fearless action on this stuff, right? I was at ground zero. I was building up from the floor. And if I could wire into my system, just take action, as small or as big as it may be, that was what I was getting wired for.
Yeah, that makes so much sense, because like you say, the knowledge without the action is kind of useless, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds really cracking in here.
So fast forward us to what it is that you're playing, where you're playing now, Chris, and what does life look like for you after going through this journey, man?
Yeah, so started consulting business and all the information that comes with that, and that was 3 years ago. So today I am taking people through the same journey that I kind of went through, right? So for a period of time, I was walking around with, HRV monitor that every heartbeat I had, it was like a beat, right? So I could see where there was inconsistent, like learn and hear and interact with my nervous system on a day-to-day basis. It's also wearing like a brain scan type of device that was walking around, and I was just watching what my data was doing, right? Like doing that. So now I teach people how to do that in a way more functional way, right? How can you really change beliefs? What part of the brain is really activated when you're doing that? So a lot of the things that I teach are based around belief systems, right? If you can change your beliefs and beliefs drive your behavior, you can essentially have the keys to the universe, right? Because the only thing that's changing people from where you are now, stick in the mud, to that person that you know you're meant to be is a bunch of action steps, right? And most people get chalked up, play this vision out in their head, and then they shut themselves down before they even take a little bit of action, before they even write it down on a pad of paper. So if we can change those beliefs, we can turn that fear response off and teach you to have a reaction and not just flip out at information. Now you can really start building that out, right? And a lot of this is coming out in neuroscience, right? Overactive amygdala, responsiveness to fear, right? All information is coming in no matter what. It just is a determination. Is it going towards the brainstem, which drives fear response and all those old paradigms and keeps you stagnant, right? You build a box around yourself of what you expect reality to be, or you can send it up to the frontal cortex, right? This is executive function. This is doing the hard thing when the hard thing is hard, right? The successful people that you and I know, Tony Robbins, Seth Godin, all those people that we aspire to, the people on our bookshelves, have that response. They do what's hard when it's necessary, and they've never worked a day in their lives because work is never work. They always love what they do. They fell in love with their passions, and it's slowly killing them from the inside out. So if you can wire that into your system, you can change your belief system around that. You can do anything, right? And then you tap into that emotions, and people don't care what you say. They remember how you make them feel. Now you really have some interesting keys.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. That is so powerful. So powerful. And so when you talk about belief systems being the limiters of what we can and what is possible for us to achieve in this life, what does that look like from your perspective in terms of how you help people to overcome those barriers, those limitations, man?
Yeah, it's fascinating how beliefs really get built out, and we're starting to understand a bit more of where they're coming from. So for a large portion of us, our beliefs are ingrained in negativity, right? From the age of 3 years old, when most of your brain comes online, until you're about 16 or 17 is when you build these belief systems. They're called laws in the brain, right? And essentially what is happening is a learned behavior has been repeated enough with an emotional stimulus for you to create a pattern that's going to run that thing on autopilot, right? So this unnecessary fear of clowns that a lot of us had, we start to look at that. What you've had is a fear response to something scary, which typically is not always a clown, but it's a stranger, right? At 3 years old, you start to see people in different outfits and this and that. And then as we continue to age, different outfits still mean stranger, but to an extreme is where the brain always takes things. And the most extreme you can take that is a clown. So now we can start to look at the way that happens. Now, what's really fascinating is most of our belief systems and fears are built in that time range when the portion of our brain that has logic is not turned on. So if we start to blow on these beliefs a little bit, we start to find that they're a house of cards, right? If you challenge them a little bit and start to bring them up to the surface, now you can really see and do something about it. But bringing them up to the surface seems to be the challenging portion of this. How can we really recognize what our belief systems are? Because a lot of them are not super fun to pull up. And you start to pull it up, the emotion that comes with it bubbles right up to the surface too. And if you look at the negativity bias, for every positive thought you have 3 negative ones. So it's all a game of how much can I keep myself turned on? How can I keep that executive function going, right? So I can be my best self. So that is the person that is the coder to that subconscious mind, which is going to change your beliefs, which drives that action. So now it's a game of, all right, how can I start to pull those belief systems up?
Wonderful. And so when you are when you are kind of trapped by those limiting beliefs, it can sometimes be difficult to recognize that it's the beliefs that are limiting and holding back the behavior, right? I guess.
Right.
Because and to a degree, you don't know what you don't know, do you? So what's the
That's
process?
exactly it.
The process for kind of for uncovering and working through that?
Right. So there's the four stages of learning that I think a lot of us know, like unconscious incompetence, conscious incompetence, conscious incompetence, and then, automatic, right? That's what we all want to get to. You can't change what you don't know, right? So if there's these patterns that you're recognizing and you're just hitting the superficial level of it, right? Most people go to this positive vibes type of thing. Well, the thinking mind only occupies 5% of the mind, right? That thing is just a fraction of what we should and can be working with, right? If you look at the successful people, they're not driven by thoughts. They just act, they do, they feel, right? Intuition's a huge part of the success community, and it's for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
It's because that other 95% that controls your autonomic nervous system, basically everything in your life, that's also where your beliefs are hidden, are centered around emotion. So if you can start to look at not what am I doing, but what am I feeling, now we can start to uncover truths. And this is where clarity really, really starts to hit home, because most of us are trying to go turn off a leaky faucet and we're handling it like at the faucet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's it, still dripping. Okay, now I go under the sink. Okay, still dripping. All right, now I need to go all right, still dripping, right? You have to keep going back until you actually find the original source of it. Because once you find the original source, it'll immediately bubble up, right? That feeling starts to come up. Right? If you've ever had talk therapy, if you've ever just been getting something off your chest, friends helping you like pry this thing out, and they got the pry bar and they're cranking that. Eventually you hit that point, you're like, holy cow, yes, right? You feel it inside your body, knots, your heart starts to leap, right? You feel it in your gut, that type of thing. That's just you unlocking that physiological, emotional pattern. And now it's coming up to your forefront, right? Because now you have awareness of it and now we can do something about it. And there's a ton of exercises that you can do to kind of start to unlock those things as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I think like you say, that multi-stage process, the process of learning, right? Being unconsciously unaware and then being aware. Awareness, I guess, is kind of a critical first step in all of this.
Yeah, right. We're in this bit of spirituality right now, where we're just trying to build consciousness, right? Trying to enhance consciousness. And I'm a big proponent of this, right? We need to enhance spirituality. Tom Chi, if you've ever heard of him, he was one of the Google Founder X Prize members, and just this incredible. He's an astrophysicist, one of the founding members of like the Google X, like all these things. He's just incredible. He took research that was showing in 1980 it cost about $2 million to create a bomb, right? That was a very expensive, nearly impossible type of thing to do. And the technology wasn't there, right? It wasn't available to everybody, but the consciousness was okay, right? Consciousness was a little bit above where the technology was, right? So, all right, that's all right. We're not going to go out and build bombs. And for most of us, $2 million isn't really feasible anyways. If you fast forward to today, those two lines are starting to merge together, right? We're coming into this interesting time zone where, all right, I can go to Toys R Us, buy a drone, go on YouTube, look up how to build this destructive machine, and then I can fly it 7 miles from the confines of my office. And now it becomes a game of consciousness, right? The technology is going exponential. Can we keep up, right? Because eventually that line is going to go over and technology is going to override consciousness. And now we have no ego, right? We have all these overriding emotions that are constantly thinking about the self, right? And if we can start to let go of that and really build and enhance that consciousness and who we are and see us as a spaceship, and what we do to you on the other side of the world is what I do to me over here, even if the effects don't get here for a long period of time, we need to see ourselves not as ego, but as ego.
Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of there's a great depth to what you just shared with us there, Chris. And for the kind of, I guess, the uninitiated, for the people that don't get that glaze over, they have the glassy eyes. How do you kind of explore and play with this so that you can develop that level of awareness, that level of reflection, that level of understanding along that path?
Yeah. So
there?
that's like the top tier of Maslow's pyramid, right? So if you start to like look at that, that's something that we still use, no matter what it is, right? You can't reach self-actualization if you're starving or have marasmus or anything like that. So we need to build up that tier, and you can know that something is at the top, right? That self-actualization, community support. But if you're not taking care of yourself, right, then we'll never reach up to that state, right? You've known a lot of really successful people that are building themselves up, but they plateau, right? I'm going to buy a bigger house, a faster car, a bigger boat. They're stuck at that ego point, right? They've never had the visualization. They never tapped and scratched the surface of what's beyond, what's more potential, right? So for people that are kind of getting into this and like starting to look at all of this, it gets back to that Mahatma Gandhi quote, like, you are the change you wish to see, right? You need to be the change. And genuinely, that is the authentic article. You need to do the work on yourself, right? This is where a lot of coaches, a lot of healers really struggle. Like, I can help, I can serve everyone, right? I can do all of this. And they never take care of themselves, right? And at some level, they're going to plateau because you can only take people where you've been. Right. And if you're not taking people to that next level, if you're not raising yourself up, if you're not really doing the work every single day, not just reading, but doing that inside work, people are going to start to pass you. They're going to start to look at you and say, yes, and right. And the good quality of a leader is not how many followers he has, but about how many leaders he produces, right? It's all about sharing information, sharing wisdom, right? Having functional steps that can not just take people where you are, but hopefully have them surpass you, right? That's the lens of the good mentor that at least I see nowadays. So getting people started on that journey is really looking inward, right? Because people don't remember what you say. They remember who you are and how you make them feel.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. And I guess it circles back to that declaration you wrote in that Waffle House, right? About being a better version of you tomorrow than you are today. It's kind of grabbing hold of that mantle, whatever that is for each and every one of us, and then living by that day by day, right?
Absolutely. That's exactly it, right? I recently shared with Mike an MRI of a mother kissing their baby. And what you see on this MRI, it's an fMRI, is that both areas of the brain that are lit up in the mom is mirrored in the child. Exact mirror, same parts of the brain are lit up. And this is so crucial for people that are working with other people, because how you see someone is how they recognize themselves inside of you, right? If you start to look at the perspective of how we see each other, I have a version of you inside my mind, and that version is how you see me, right? We create these biases, not even around who you actually think I am, but who I think you think I am.
Woo.
Right. It gets complex, but it doesn't have to be, right?
Yeah.
As long as you can maintain positivity, but not just the positive vibes type of thing, but feel this emotion, you bring that energy to it, right? Because I'm seeing you not as you are, but as you wish to be. And that lighting up in me lights that up in you as well. It opens you up to that potential. That's what having a coach is so crucial for, is even in your darkest days, even on your hardest of nights, that person is seeing the best in you, even if you have that as a blind spot right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really, really powerful, man. I love talking with you, Chris, because you literally expand my mind every time we speak. It is amazing. It's a privilege and wonderful to be able to share this with the world.
Yeah.
With the world. So the topic of your talk got me really intrigued, right? This idea of my brain thinks I'm dying right now, you know.
Right.
What was talk a bit around that for me and just give me a bit of insight, because I'm
Absolutely
curious to know.
Yeah, this one's really crucial, right? So number one fear in the world, most people think it's death. Unfortunately, it's not. The second one, what's it got to be, right? Spiders, snake. All right, no. The number one fear, the thing that we are all just deadly afraid of, above death, above snakes, above spiders, above sharks, above drowning, is public speaking, right? So right now, or prior to this, right in the first 5 minutes of this conversation, my nervous system went into shutdown mode, right? thinking that I'm not enough, thinking that all of these really negative things are going to start to come. Even if you ask some of the best speakers in the world, you must not get nervous anymore, right? You must not get nervous. It's not the fact that they don't get nervous. They've leveraged that energy internally and gave it a new perspective. And that's what the name of this game really comes down to. So what I was going to do for you guys is I was going to hook myself up to like an HRV monitor, and I was going to come on the air, share my screen and say, look, this is my system crashing. This is what fear genuinely looks like. And now watch me get rid of it in 10 seconds, right? Which is an interesting thing to do, something we'll do on the next one. But what really starts to come up inside of the research is that we always thought that fear took us to this fight or flight response, right? We've always heard about this. I'm going to fight what's trying to challenge my existence, or I'm going to run away from it. It's actually not entirely true. What we find out is it's fight, flight, or freeze, right? This gets us to that stick in the mud type of mentality. Mm-hmm. So the reason I was talking about this, my brain thinks I'm dying right now, is because it did, right? We broke through that. And that's what really comes down to the name of the game, because most of us get this fear response and we get it as a learned behavior, and it becomes our personal reality, right? Our personality is to live this perspective of fear, even if we don't think we are, right? It's running on the background. It's this subconscious pattern that's really going. So if you're recognizing yourself not taking action, if you're not seeing yourself really leaning into these types of things, we need to look at, are you living your life through the lens of fear, right? Because if you can turn that fear response off, you can get strategies to shutting that down and open you back up to that frontal cortex where your best self is, where those unique problem solving, not problem finding self is, right? Because you can stack up the problems, right? It's really easy to do. It's what we call that white ceiling syndrome, right? You're laying there at night and thinking about all the things that you have to do tomorrow, and tomorrow is not even remotely close, right? And is it actually going to change it thinking about it? That's the curse of having this monstrous brain, is this fear response gets activated simply by trying to project into the future the negativity that we can or cannot have. So if we can shut down that fear response, we can start to control our thoughts, to influence our emotions, to drive our behaviors. That's the natural sequence of things. But most of us take in stimulus from the external environment, have this fear response, which makes us feel scared. That determines how we think, and how we think now determines where we will take ourselves in our environment. That environment's going to be self-soothing, quick fix type of thing, right? We never want to go into that uncomfortable space because it's stretching, right? Talked about trying to touch my toes all the time. Touching my toes is challenging. I got tight hamstrings, right? But I do it, right? That's the executive function turning on, doing what's hard when easy is available. So if you can continue to turn that on, eventually the fear response is just a glance of a thought, right? You've balanced out that negative to positive ratio. So now you can potentially flip it. So now you have 3 positive thoughts for every negative thought. Now you're naturally just taking fearless action. Now you're just leaning in. Now you're just learning to fly, right? That's the scary part about it, is we have to go inside that stretch zone, right? You start to break down those barriers of those beliefs, and you realize those are self-created. And if you've self-created, if those are learned behaviors, you can sure as heck replace those with whatever you so choose. So the reason that we were going to talk about fear is because in the entrepreneur space, so many people have this unique, authentic, beautiful self that's resonating inside of them. And the graveyard is the richest place on earth. It's full of potential. And that's the one thing that I refuse every single day to live with when I'm laying down at night, is regret.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I think all too often, a client of mine said to me just last week, was she used that word of, I feel frozen. I feel frozen. And that's so debilitating, isn't it? When you have that sense of paralysis, almost like you can't make progress. And therein lies the graveyard of unfulfilled potential that you mentioned there.
That's it. Right? That software that you're at, right? That best self that resides inside of you is not available, right? Mm-hmm. So first off, it starts like that stick in the mud, like, all right, this is a bad day, right? I don't know, it was a bad day, right? I can't make sense of it, and I just don't feel like doing anything. I should go to the gym, should make me feel better, right? But nah, screw it, I'll just watch Netflix, right? Starts off as that, and it's a slippery slope, because every time you do what's easy instead of hard, you put another brick on the wall that's boxing you in, right? Another brick that I can't do it. Another brick, I shouldn't do it. And eventually the thing that comes up is hopelessness, You absolutely refuse to take action because you've built this monstrous castle around you of defense, of I'm not good enough, of I can't, of somebody else is already doing it, right? If you can take those things down, right, you built it up, you can surely take that down, right? That's the natural process of neuroplasticity. It's the brain's ability to change itself. So if you built it up and changed that into a fear response, great, let's start taking it down, right? Brick by brick. But what's really fascinating is that there's such an efficiency exchange of you being afraid versus you living your best life, that the moment that you start to enhance and trust in those beliefs, the moment you get that frontal cortex activation again, is when you really start to take the reins of life, right? When you're afraid, all the blood, all the nutrition, all the awareness, your brain is directed into fear. And when you're inside of that fear state, the last thing you need is higher cognitive power, right? Emotion. You'll do what's easy, right? I need instant energy. That donut looks really good, right? I'm going to burn all my willpower looking for the next thing that's trying to kill me, right? All these things start to go away. You lose focus, right? All these things. And we're constantly not taking action because that fear response wants us to wait for the lion to come so that when it does come, we can run. So I'll constantly consume the carbs. I'll constantly do what's easy because I'm in this fear state. Right? If you get your head straight, you'll naturally see yourself craving better foods. You'll naturally see yourself doing the thing that's hard, parking in the back of the parking lot, going to the supermarket, right? Those types of little things are the things that really build you up to living that better life. And they're so small sometimes, but that's how we climb mountains, right? We don't try to sprint up them. We do one step at a time, 1% per day.
Absolutely. And you mentioned a couple of things there, Chris, that I think would be interesting just for you to elaborate on a little bit. One of them was like getting your head straight, getting in the game of being able to take those steps, right?
Yeah.
So that I would love to talk about that a little, for you to talk about that a little bit so that I understand that a little deeper.
Right.
Well, sorry, go on.
This is that challenging space that we all get into, right? So there's that period of stretch where you know that something needs to change, right? You've recognized it. Now it's learning to do something about it, but that's the learning phase. This is where 99% of us get stuck, right? Who here consumes 25 podcasts a day, right? Who here has shelf help instead of self-help, right? We get stuck in here because we've not learned to take action on these things. So getting your head straight is not about consuming information. You have so much information, right? The people that are listening to this are not like the average run of the mill. These are the entrepreneurs. They've already leaned in. Now it's going on to that next phase. It's every day taking in information and doing something about it, taking fearless action on that. And that's just getting to that next stage in Maslow's pyramid, which mirrors perfectly on how the brain's set up. Right? So getting your head straight is all about directing your thoughts into action, right? Thoughts to emotion, drive belief, drive behavior. So if you can start to feel that emotion, start to recognize it, that is what is going to change the belief. That's what's going to take you to that next step. So naturally, instead of like maybe having to journal when you're listening to podcasts now, like me, you have sticky notes everywhere. Right? I get 140 letters for information that I liked about that, no matter what it is, 7-hour podcast, a full lecture, sticky note. And then I have underneath it a single sentence of what I will do about it written in the I am present tense statement, right? I am this with the action step behind it, right? I will be doing this. And the sentence makes no sense, but what my brain is recognizing is subject over object, right? So it's saying I am, and then I'm wiring into my system that I'm already performing that task. Right? Learning to do that is programming into your system to take action on things. And eventually the overwhelming emotion will outcompete those negative thought patterns, right? This is that effortless effort. This is accessing flow. This is you writing 55 emails, looking at the clock and saying, holy cow, that was an hour. It seemed like 7 hours. This usually takes me so much time to do. This is getting into flow research at Flow Genome Project, right? If you can access that state of flow, if you can get into that effortless effort, productivity goes up 500%. Seriously,
wow.
If you can scratch that, you can get Monday through Friday's work done on Monday before noon, right? 60% of people that work a 9 to 5, 60% of that time is blown off wasted time. If you can use a sliver of that to access flow, to do some personal development, right? And you see this in thriving companies right now. They dedicate their employees to better self, to better living. Mind Valley, Google, Facebook, these companies have slides, workout centers, right? And they work 6-hour days now. And 2 hours of that is dedicated to nutrition, taking care of themselves, because they're dropping their employees into flow way faster, right? I know there's certain days where I'm not with the program, and I'm not going to push and effort my way through it. I'm going to wait for that storm to come, because I know it's the rebuilding process right now for me. And if I let that thing hit, I'll crank out 9 hours of content in a single day, because I'm just in it, right? I'm flowing. Things are coming out of me. And I'm like, who was that guy, right? That best self is just shining through, because you're not doubting yourself. You've turned off that thought process. That's getting your head straight, is getting you connected to what you're doing and why you're doing it.
Beautiful. I loved how you termed it effortless effort. That was magical, man. That is, because it is when you're in that zone, it is effortless effort. It's wonderful.
Yeah. And
something else I picked up on what you said there, Chris, and Taryn Lee in the comments pointed it out. Hello in South Africa, Taryn Lee. The concept of I am that I am, I am that, I am, that's part of this identity shifting and conditioning the self. Like you mentioned it, writing it in the sticky note in the present tense, I am, I will, and keeping it in a way that retrains the brain. And you touched on that, and you also mentioned something called neuroplasticity, and that pricked my ears up, because I've heard it, but I don't quite understand what it is.
Yeah.
Are you able to kind of explain, speak to both of those areas, man?
Absolutely. So for a long time, we thought that the brain was a stagnant machine, right? If you go back 500 years, we thought the brain wasn't doing anything but cooling down blood. As we continue to evolve, we see that the brain and these connections of neurons that are running through it can change, right? We can interact with these pathways, and this is what executive function is all about, right? That frontal cortex that we want turned on for a lot of the time is really about doing what's hard when easy is available, right? Learning and connecting those pathways and doing those types of things, right, will literally change the physiology of your brain. And it starts off as chemical, right? Typically takes about 60 days for you to change your chemical mind. So going over from that fear response, that overactive amygdala, which is constantly saying fear, 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 you're not enough, you can't do this. It's shutting you down, right? And putting brick by brick up on your life boundaries, borders that you should never cross. But when you start to break those down and you look beyond, the instant you get new perspective is the moment that your brain goes into, whoa, what is this, right? I don't understand. I've never seen this before, right? Novelty is so crucial for brain health, because it gives you new perspective on old things. That's how we begin to change. That's how we begin to leverage things, is seeing old patterns in a new light. Right? Because most of these things, they look like these big, scary closet monsters until we bring it out and look at it. It's a teddy bear, right? It's just been casting this monstrous shadow. But if we can see it as a new person, instead of this fear response, which is not allowing you to see it with a logical, straightforward, best self mind, and instead really leveraging our mind to turn on some different brain waves, which are going to activate different portions of the brain, you can look at your old fears, those old traumas, those things that happened to you, and you'll notice that you're seeing them differently, right? Most of us, if we've had trauma, and we all have this emotional history, we return to that as the present person, right? This is me, right? And you're living in it as that person, right? Reliving that experience. But instead of doing that, if you go into it as a new person, as that frontal cortex turned on in this calm state, alpha brainwave dropping into theta, if you return to those memories as that person, you'll notice that you're not in the memory, you're watching it. And inside of that, you can go back and change old histories, right? You can look at things differently, know that hurt people, right? People did that for a reason. The empathy centers start to get turned on inside of this compassion, right? Not just for yourself, but for other people, right? That's what neuroplasticity is all about, is changing perspective. You start to see things differently. You'll start to interact with them differently. Now you've got new information, right? Now you've got awareness of something different. You've looked beyond the veil and said, I want to go there. Now it's just a fact of taking that information and transforming it into wisdom, which is simply taking action on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so in that process, when you are like observing those things that come up and drive feelings of negativity and fear and all of these things that keep us frozen, that keep us spinning our tires in the mud, is there a process for that? Chris, that you kind of walk through, or how does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. So that tires in the mud thing, that's the fear response getting turned on, right? That's us telling us that we're not good enough. You shouldn't, right? You can't, because your brain knows that it's going to go into that stretch zone, and outside of that is the unknown, right? We don't know what's there, right? Novelty, newness, all of that information is hanging out there, and your brain recognizes that, and it's a fear response. Quick ways to turn the fear response, right? You can look at it, right? The simple act of bringing awareness into that and asking yourself, is this my real thought self? And you can play this with the what if game, right? What if I do this, right? Imagine, right? If you look at old storybooks, like imagine if, right? Or once upon a time instantly transports you to a new dimension, right? When you begin to imagine, you literally begin to picture and visualize things. You are dropping yourself out of fear, literally using executive function. That fear response is extraordinarily difficult to project and see things inside the confines of your own mind, because when you're being chased by that lion, the last thing you want to do is think about that really hot chick that you saw at the coffee shop, right? And it's like, boom, instantly dead, right? There's a reason that we're here right now. It's because we have a really good fear response. Thank you, like great grandma for that. You can shut that down though, right? It's no longer serving you. So taking action on that, you can blow it down with a house of cards, right? Look at it, ask it. What's the emotion behind the thought here? That's a really crucial one, is getting down to it. And a lot of it is, why am I thinking this way? And you get the answer, right? If you think about the thoughts running through your head, it's always question, answer, question, answer. These things aren't bubbling up to the surface. The only issue is the person asking the questions is typically asking, is this going to kill me? And typically the person answering it isn't you. It's that natural autonomic nervous system saying, yep, this is going to kill us, right? Definitely going to die. You need to go get McDonald's, right? I need fuel for this now, right? We cannot survive without French fries. We will die. I need immediate energy, right? All these things. And then you start to fall down the spiraling. So pulling out of that, meditation is a must, right? There's loads of research that is showing us that when you begin to meditate, find mindfulness in your day, even if it's just mindful eating or recognizing or having awareness of something beautiful in your life, gratitude, you start to downregulate that amygdala. And the amygdala is this ping pong type of thing that's going to shoot information to your brainstem, which is instantly going to go to fear, or it's going to go and give it frontal lobe activation, right? So instead of stimulus coming up, which is unbiased information, we give bias to it once it hits the brain, right? It's either going to go to fear, which is trying to kill you, or you can look at it and have objective, logical information and say, no, this isn't going to kill me, right? Traffic is a huge one. So many of us get stuck in traffic. Can you do anything about that traffic? No. Your nervous system is still going to think that you are going to die inside of that traffic. Why is that? What is it about traffic that's really leeching power away from you? What is that? And for most people, it's taking them away from something they'd much rather be doing. I'm stuck in this mindless loop, right? I can't do anything. Like, they feel helpless. Right? That's what a lot of fear responses are about, is not being able to control your environment, when naturally that's why humans are at the top of the food chain, is because we can control our environment, right? If you go find a wolf in Yosemite and ask it to go change its environment, it is stuck in the confines of its own existence, right? It cannot go, I'm going to go hit the Sahara, right? It'll die. We can have that. But when we lose that power, that's where things start to get squirrely. We think the environment has boxed us in, when realistically it's the mind that's meant to be unleashed, right? It's not this body. If you can start to unlock the mind and say, hey, great, every single day I'm stuck in traffic, no matter what, I'm going to go take myself to school today, right? I'm going to listen to a podcast. I'm going to listen to Dr. Chris. I'm going to write a sticky note down and say, this is what I learned, right? So eventually you'll compile this book. And that's exactly what I started doing in rush hour when I was living in Atlanta. Is I'm stuck here anyways, right? I can't do anything about it. I'm going to listen to a podcast, an audiobook every single day. And then when I pull into my apartment, I'm going to write down on a sticky note a little piece of information. What did I learn today? What am I going to do about it today? Right? And then eventually I had this stack, and it was just this monstrous book of really cool facts, really cool information, and how to do something about it to make it applicable. Right? That's turning off the fear response, is doing something about it. Because when we have that fear, we have our foot on the gas, let's go, and the brain's saying no, right? Body wants to go, brain says no. Body wants to go, right? So you're lighting your tires up, right? You're screeching, you're burning excess energy that should be going to more important things. If you can shut that down and just go do something small about it, right? Write something down, you will instantly feel better. right? And that's the secret sauce. You feel better, which is going to make you think better.
Love that. I love that idea of doing something small, because it can make you feel paralyzed, can't it? It can make you literally feel like you just can't move forward, backwards, sideways.
Freeze response, right? It's that natural freeze response.
Yeah, definitely. So I loved your suggestion about doing something small, taking that little micro step, and
that's it.
Having that as the thing that gives you momentum, man. That was good.
Yeah, you start to look at the power of habit or atomic habits. They don't tell you to go out. Like if you want to wake up, if you're waking up at 8 a.m. every day, and I want to wake up at 3 in the morning, they don't say start waking up at 3 in the morning. They go backwards 5 minutes a day, right? This little bit of shift every single day, and then having reflection, right? Reflection is crucial. It takes a 13% change for your brain to have conscious awareness of change. 13%, right? If we're doing 1% drips per day, if you do 13% all at one time, you put your brain immediately into stretch, right? Fear instantly pops up unless you're down regulating it with meditation, mindfulness, journaling, walking, all these really fantastic things. So if you're doing 1% a day and then you hit the end of the week and now you're like, look at how crazy I've done. Like, look at all this improvement. You've suddenly tricked your nervous system into growing exponentially and not telling it that it's doing it, right? It's like, okay, yeah, we could wake up 5 minutes early. It's 5 minutes. I don't care. It's 5 minutes, right? Yeah, we can do it again. 5 minutes, sure. Why not? Yeah, right. So now you're kind of like putting a little bit of this in. Now the real secret sauce is if you can feel the emotion of why you're doing it, it'll naturally happen, right? There's a reason that kids wake up at 5:30 a.m. on Christmas Day and have no alarm clock set, right? Inside of their mind, they've connected. I wake up early, I get presents, right? I get so excited, right? They're connected to this emotion all the time. So instantly they're going to go do it, right? This is the equation for motivation is your why minus what equals motivation. When the what is bigger than your why, you will never do it, or you will have to willpower your way into it. And willpower burns the candle at both ends, right? You will run out of energy in a week, in a month, right? And all you need to look at studies for this is New Year's Eve resolutions, right? Why is it that the gym is packed on the 2nd, right? January 2nd comes kicking in. It's like, wow, there's not even a bicycle and nobody likes somebody's riding the broke bike. Oh my gosh, right? Go there on the 14th, 65% of the people have already quit. Go there on the 1st of February, 85% have quit. Go there at the end of February, 95% of people have already lost their resolution. If 5% are there, have a reason for being there. They've connected to a why. And instead of being pushed by fear, they're being pulled by vision. That is what successful people tend to do. They have a vision, right? Look at what Elon Musk is doing out there. The dude is burning up, and this dude's working 100 hours a week, but he has this vision. All he talks about is vision, is vision, is vision, is vision. He's not only getting pulled by this thing, but it's hooked up to a pulley system being pulled by a monster truck, right? And he refuses to let go, which, right, gets down to balance. There has to be work-life balance for a lot of these things, but he's being dragged by this vision now, right? All these successful people have that type of mentality because they're honestly always connected to their why, always connected to the vision. And at first, it's going to take some effort, right? You're going to have to stay connected to it, write it on walls, write it on legal pads, right? If you go into my office, there's hundreds of legal pads written around because I'm always writing down ideas, always connecting to my why. Every night when I go to sleep, writing down, why am I going to wake up tomorrow? Right? Because most of us hit the alarm and go, oh shit, even subconsciously, right? OS. Right? You're instantly telling your brain that life is not worth living. That is a bad way to start the day, right? You're instantly starting off with stress. Instantly. Start to look at heart attack studies, right? There is this massive increase. Like the most common time for heart attack is on a schedule. Monday morning, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. is the most common time for heart attack. Right? And think about it. That's when people are stuck in traffic going to work. The body would rather have a heart attack than go to work. Talk about stress, right? And this is a built up thing, right? It doesn't just happen. Stress doesn't come and you have a heart attack, right? Over the years, over the decades, it starts to build up. You release cortisol, which causes vasoconstriction, right? Your arteries start to get hard, right? When your arteries get hard, squeezes, start to get cortisol build up, right? You start to get all this nasty plaque built up. And then eventually it takes that one last squeeze and then boom, heart attack, right? The widowmaker comes kicking through. You have to go get triple bypass, coronary, these types of things, right? And it's this sequence of events that'll lead you up into that, oh crap, life isn't worth living type of thing. That's default living, right? Naturally, your brain goes to fear. Designed living is all about breaking out of that cycle, finding that best life, staying connected to it.
Wonderful, man. And being a better version of you tomorrow than you are today. That is
right.
So powerful.
And it doesn't have to be profound, right? It doesn't have to be these extraordinary insights like I'm connected to universal consciousness flowing in through me from this like conscious, like it doesn't have to be that, right? Like something simple like today, I recognized I hit the snooze button, right? I went back in, my little girl woke up because I was trying to sneak out of bed and I have a clicky ankle from playing so many years of soccer. So I went back down and I laid down and my second alarm went off. It's like, okay, something simple. I need to find a better system to build skill around getting out of the bed sneakily so that she doesn't wake up with me at like really early in the morning, right? Mm-hmm. Small things, right? It's the 1% shifts that you can do something about.
Wonderful. The 1% shifts. And it makes it feel achievable and doable and something that we can take action on, right?
Yeah. That's where the secret sauce is having objective goals that are achievable, right? And recognizing that you can and should do something about it. And 5 minutes earlier in the morning to wake up, for sure I'll do that, right? It's 5 minutes, right? I usually burn 30 going after it. That is the what of what's going on, right? If you connect to the why, you'll find yourself, I'm going to do it for 10 minutes. Heck, I'm going to do it for 15, right? The bigger your why, the larger your ability to stretch is, right? You can find people who have done insane things, right? Because they believe they can. Their why is massive, right? Where I am today, living my life, the way I live my life is impossible. Everyone's like, that was an impossibility. Why would you possibly go do that? There's no way, right? That's what they told me at the hospital when in there. Your body's healed. It's not like there must have been a fault in the machine, right? There's no way. Like they took x-rays, a lot of x-rays because my body should not have healed that fast, right? Hack your beliefs and your body will follow.
Wonderful, wonderful and powerful stuff, man. Chris, I honestly could talk to you all day, my friend. It is a joy. And I have literally filled an entire page in my iPad with notes and words and things that you expressed so wonderfully and so powerfully today. So thank you so much for sharing your time and with us today. It's amazing. And just before we kind of wrap things up here, could you just let us know how people can connect with you and what that looks like? And, you know, if people want to find out more and connect with you, what does that look like? How can they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on any social media. It's just Dr. Chris Lee, Dr. just Dr. Chris Lee. My website is Doctor fully spelled out because somebody took the Dr. and I am not a fan of that. They're a good person. Forgiveness exercise, right? Let's practice what we preach. You can find that at Dr. Chris Lee as well. But I'm all over social media.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Chris, thank you again for taking the time to share with us today. It has been a truly enlightening hour to spend with you, and it's been wonderful. I appreciate you so much. Thank you.
It's always my pleasure, Colin. I'll talk to you soon, all right?
Wonderful. Yeah, take care. See you soon, Chris.
See ya.
Thank you. What a powerful talk from Dr. Chris Lee today. I'm genuinely honored to share the screen with Dr. Chris and hear his words of wisdom. So hope you guys enjoyed the talk, and we'll be on in a couple of minutes with the next segment. Another amazing speaker lined up to be with you very soon. Bye for now.